for coming back today and returning. And we knew today was going to be so many people were going to come, and the heart energy was going to be so strong, which is really a testament to all that you've offered this community for several decades. And we want to express our gratitude for your research. And congratulations for the award of the medal! And I was thinking that really it is thanks to the Queen that we are here today. So gratitude for her for having given that award. It brought you in this country. And I've shared to the community before that you were my first Tibetan Buddhist teacher. And so you hooked me really fast, and so it's thanks to you that I'm here today. And anyway, and to you all, it's so wonderful to be able to come together and see you all. Thank you all for coming. And also when I heard from afar, I was living in the US at the time, and I heard of your appointment and your imminent departure of this community, which of course we knew was going to happen someday. And my heart really reached out to the community because I thought, well, these are shoes that seem impossibly big to fill. And so I want to thank Geshe Namdak for stepping into those shoes, and how fortunate we are to have Geshe Namdak here. And so tonight was really wonderful because both Geshe-las were able to have a little bit of time together and share experiences and tips on how to support the Jamyang community. And anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Venerable. Where are you going to sit? Maybe come here. Oh, yeah. So first, I will do a little bit the more like officially whatever. Then I will go into my blah blah. So, first of all, I would like to say thank you for the the very nice, warm welcoming here. From the director and from Geshe Namdak, and also the whole community. And many of you came from long distance. And I know the British weather, and particularly this kind of time. And also weekends are not easy, the public transports. Regardless of all those challenges, you just come to see me and to say hello. And it was really very moving, and the joy to see many, I won't say many old faces, I will say many familiar faces, and also there are some new faces. And so I want to say from my heart, thank you for coming, to see me. So that is really just the official part of what I want to say. And so first I will say just a few words about this, why I came here. There are 2-3 reasons, and one of the reasons, as Venerable briefly touched on, that is, in March, end of March, I received an email from the British establishment Sorry to people who don't like the establishment. And so I received an email from the cabinet office from that part of the who deal with the award, and saying I was nominated. And I didn't pay that much attention in the first 3-4 weeks. I thought, is it true? And for what reason? And all those things. And then I went to Dharamsala for His Holiness Dalai Lama's long life prayer. And I got this next email reminding, saying there are only a few days, whether you want to say, yes, I want to receive it or not. But that time, while I was reading that email, one of my friends also occasionally I talk to, not monk, but lay, occasionally I talk to him some of those, which I'm not very clear in this my new role. In this my new role, there are many things which I'm not very sure where should I step, where should I put my feet and so forth. And he was there with me discussing some of the other issues, certain other points. And I said to him, look, I have this email and I'm not sure whether I'm going to take it or go to receive. And he said, no, you should do it. You should write immediately saying, yes, I'm going to receive. And so that's how it happened. And then, in July, that actual announcement. And then, one of the reasons I came here with a short period of time to visit to UK is to receive that award. I said to some of my, the colleagues in monasteries, other abbots, we have frequent meetings being the abbots of the different monasteries. And I said, I'm not sure what this award will do for me. A man reached over 60 and end of my working life. I don't think it will bring me extra, increase my salary. But and also, my present job, I don't have salary, so I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with this award. And he showed me the three of us, they show very serious faces, and they say, we know you don't want it, but we Tibetans want this. So that really summarized me to really, to come and receive that, personally. So, and so on the 15th, just last Friday, I received that award, which, always, because establishment has done this for hundreds of years, and the arrangement and how they do the things are just always very impressive. And the teas are delicious, and and the biscuits are really good, and so that's how it is. And but it is not just me. I really don't think I have done any impressive job or activities to the community, but it is due to the community. You have many of you come to this center or other places when I lead classes for many years. And this our interaction between you and me and other in other places, and that is the result of what I've received. So I don't feel that full credit go to me. It is all of us. Since 1994, I've been in this center until last year, and through this center, I've managed to get opportunity to do something, not any massive things, but the day-to-day small things. And so I want to say thank you for having that opportunity, and not only here, but also in Leeds and Bath and other places, given me this opportunity. So and that's the one chapter that briefly I want to say. The main thing tonight, what I'm going to talk is about my role now, in the monastery, and which I thought is good to share with you. So last night, the Tibetan community London, they sent me an email a few weeks back saying they want to do a celebration. And I said, I usually hate celebration, which is true, really. But now in my new role, I have to participate again and again and again. And as many of you know, in the Tibetan gathering, particularly celebration gathering, there's always tea and rice. Started with the tea and rice. And so, anyway, when the Tibetan community sent me an email saying they want to do a small celebration, I said, okay, if you give me an opportunity to say a few words to the local Tibetan, then I will come to that celebration. And last night I joined with the Tibetans, and many of them came. And so main point why I'm saying this is also same in here, when Jamyang director sent me an email saying, it would be nice to come here, to join and to see the, similar faces. And I thought, okay, that's fine. I will have, opportunity to share some of the things that I'm going through in my new role. So last year, when I received this, information in March that I was appointed as a abbot of the Sera Mey, I had a mixed feeling. Well, that's true. That's not any fabrication. It is true. I had a very mixed feeling. The positive side, I felt, okay, now I'll have the opportunity to serve a little bit to the Tibetan community, particularly in the monastic community, where I came from, where I've grown up, and where still I have a strong connection. My teachers, and some of my colleagues, classmates, and so forth. In that way, and also I felt it is the right time, over 60, it is the right time to say bye-bye to this kind of, work and have a new role. And on the other hand, I was, I was worried, and I'm still worried, how much I can sort of contribute to that community. And after that, I have to come back, whether I like it or not, British weather, I have to come back because, I have not, and if I want to live in India until my last day, then I have to have Indian papers, which is big headache, and I'm not going to try. So therefore I have to come back. So, when I come back, whether I'm going to cope, to reestablish back to the UK. So there are lots of personal mixture feelings. So my life in the West, most of my life in the West, something 27 or 8 years, most of the time in London. Usually I say I'm Londoner, and also I'm South Londoner. And my friend Steve doesn't like that because he used to be black cab driver, and in the early times Steve says we black cab driver don't go across the South London. Going back to the community where I come from after 20-something years, I usually summarize into 3 points: interesting, challenging, and deep satisfaction. So those are the 3 points which I'm going to share with you. It is very interesting because now my role is not anymore student in that monastery, which was the case when I was young man. So now I'm leading the community, and therefore, I have to really careful. I have to really think carefully what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say, and if I'm going to have some plan for the monastery, how I'm going to plan, and so forth. And why it is very interesting, because living here for 20-something years, very subconsciously, very subconsciously, I learned, I picked up many of Western way of thinking. Not very deliberately, mainly just talking to my friends for 20-something years with my broken English and all those things. I have picked up many Western way of thinking, including my writing. Although my English writing, some of you know my English writing is terrible, very poor. But after 2 weeks after I took that role, one of the secretary, Tibetan secretary, a monk, came to my to me and saying, can you draft 3 letters for different different people? So I said, okay, I will do that. And I drafted and I emailed back. And after a few hours, this secretary came up to my place, and his face is very, because being abbot, he can't say directly. But same time, he says how I draft the letters. He says horrible. Endings are not very respectable. Startings are not very respectable. He had put it some notes and then came with this. He said, Rinpoche, do you really want to say this line? Do you really want to address this way? And I said, okay, these are the points we need to make. Now you draft one. And he came back in a very honorific starting, very honorific ending. So then I noticed, okay, I have picked up many Western way of communicating, very direct. And so anyway, that is, so since then, although, I know I have to be very careful how I'm going to talk, how I'm going to, address to and how I'm going to chair the meetings, because I need to chair lots of meetings. And I really need to think very carefully, because it is not just my motivation, it is how I'm going to talk, how I'm going to communicate with the monks, with the staffs. So why I'm saying this? I'm saying this again a little bit with the Dharma connection. Our minds are very susceptible to change, very easy to change, very easy to adopt the new things. And so in that case, in that sense, no matter how difficult, how tough, culturally, socially, environmentally, our minds are, easy to influence by the environment, by the society, by the culture where we live. So in that sense, we, no matter how small, no matter how insignificant that might be, it is useful to create the society, create the culture, create the environment, something constructive. Whether we lead as a Dharma classes or not, in the family, in the community, in the bigger society, just creating the environment, the culture itself, if we create a positive, constructive culture and environment, that itself helps to our way of communicating to the other beings, other human beings. So that's why I'm saying the interesting, and job is very challenging, very, very challenging job. Venerable Geshe will know this. I think in certain extent, maybe more than me, because, being Westerner, very, have the easy to, observe what's going on. And because, when you say abbot of the monastery, in the Tibetan monastery, it is the responsibility is not just the spiritual responsibility. It is also admin responsibility. You are the head of the admin. And as you know, being head of the administration is not that easy in general, and particularly in that kind of society. Society which is, or community which is in the cross, in a very, what is the right word? In a juncture, really. Of course, led by His Holiness Dalai Lama, supported, advised by His Holiness Dalai Lama, we are sort of moving into some, the direction, moving into the right direction, but it is not that straightforward. First of all, spiritually, when I say spiritually, more in the education, Buddhist study. Monastery, the Sera Monastery where I am, within that Serme, there are 2,200, 300 monks, and within that, there are about 642 school children, and So out of 640 something school children, 72.3% are aged below 12. And my first horror and a challenge, the day that enthronement ceremony, so I was taken to my official residence, which is at the top of the monastery, and very nice rooms, kitchens, and so forth. And the next morning, I woke up relatively early, around 5. Then around 5:45, I started to hear the, children's voice. And it was raining, June. And suddenly, around 6, the school children are coming to do the memorization, which is just below my window. About 600. And it was raining. And hardly they have any protection, umbrella or anything like that. Just putting their small bags on their head and running. So, if I use that word with this right or not, I don't know. My heart was broken. So then around 7:45, they all left back to their individual houses, to their teachers. And then again they came back 8:45 for the day school. And then go back after 11:30 for lunch, then again come back around 1:30 and stay until 4. Then went back for the dinner, then come back 6 and stay until 8:30. It was tough, really tough. So, and I asked some of my, the friends and the people whom I can, I ask the things, and they don't feel any, they don't see anything wrong, and I see very much wrong there, and small kids, in that kind of environment. So after 2 months, I negotiated with the school teachers and the monastery admin, saying, why don't we stop having morning memorization? And it didn't go well at all. It didn't go. But I negotiated bit by bit. So there are these things. I mean, these the in charge of the school, those teachers, that they are not punishing these children, but they see this is how they should be educated, and that's the tradition. And because I lived in here, those children should have a good sleep and all those things. So there's a clash, big clash. So these are some form of, just one small example of challenges. To see which is right and which is wrong, and between the two different cultures, is very, you can't say it is wrong. Children need good sleep, You can't also say, no, it's good to train in this way, and they're grown up, they have good memorization, they have memorized all the texts, what they need for the debating, and blah, blah, blah. So it is not that straightforward to say which is right and which is wrong, which is good and which is not good. So this is just a small example. I mean, there are many positive changes out there since I moved to here. For example, when I was in monastery, we don't have, I mean, school, there were schools, but schools are very, very, very basic. I mean, still the Sera Mey school is very basic. Sera Mey school is much well established, much better. But these kids, they receive these modern educations. When I was young kid, we don't have the opportunity. And there are many that kind of changes in the monastery. And in the past, before 1959, also when I was in monastery, writing is not that much emphasized. Really very much oral-based education, debating, recitation, memorization, very much oral-based. And now, the writing is emphasized, which is big change. And I remember very clearly when I was, in doing exam, many of my colleagues were, the monks who came from Tibet, soon after 1959. Very few of them can write quite, nicely. Some of them have very difficult to write. But last year, as well as this year, when when in Sera Mey and also in the other exams, when I go and look around, majority, 99%, the writing was excellent, very, very good. And that is very different, from where, compared to when I was. So there are many positive changes out there, including having education for modern science. Still a very early stage. Nevertheless, it is taking place, and it is set within the curriculum. If you want to become to go through the Geshe degree and this Geshe degree, you have to go through and pass through those exams, and still, in pipeline, new projects are happening. So there are many positive changes there too. But there are also some changes which are not positive, very worrying, changes are there too. One time, my flat, which is in the top of the Serme monastery, and from that, on the east window, from that window, I can see the monks going from one place, from the kitchen to after debating. I can see this, what's the right word? Not from the long distance. I'll see, they're walking. So one day, for 30 minutes, I did a little bit of observation. And within that 30 minutes, about 28 monks passed from that window shot where I can see. And out of the 28, 26 were on the phone. Out of 28, 26, only 2. So in that sense, there's no difference whether you're living in London or in the monastery. The other day, when I traveled to somewhere in the underground, almost every single person in that, the cabin, either watching or doing something with their mobile. Almost every single person. And it is the same in the monastery. And that is a worrying. I'm not against the modern technology at all. Although I'm not very keen to use, many of you know that, I don't have Facebook, I don't have Twitter. Seldomly I answer my email, but I said to, several times in the meeting and also big gathering, with a little bit tease and to raise the awareness, because Venerable will know, there were 13 phone towels, they're called towels, masks. In the mosque you call it, yeah. There are 13 towels in the monastery. 13. I said to them, just a little bit joke, a tease. I said, Airtile, mainly the company called Airtile. Airtile company is very, very generous to the monastery. I'm sure, I know some of the monks are using the internet to download, to connect very positively. But I doubt, the others, for what purpose. But definitely they are using huge amounts of what you call data. And that's the sign why they are putting more and more towels. And in India, it is very cheap. Very, very cheap. I did a Google. India is the second cheapest in the world. Internet. Not necessarily that much reliable. Quite often it's got stopped. There's no no reason, but that is the case. So there are some of the changes are very challenging, very worrying. At the same time, the head of the abbot, we don't have clue what to do with that. We had lots of meetings, we have lots of discussions, but we have no clue. In here or in other developed country, you have lots of information. What are the disadvantages? Health-wise, and so on and so forth. But in India, there's no information whatsoever. What are the disadvantages of having constantly looking at the screen? And this small screen, and so forth. So those are something Then for the Tibetans, now that I'm going a little bit closer to the Tibetans issue, because since 2008, Chinese government has changed some of their policy towards the Tibetans, and also they built a very tight connection to the Nepal, where it's the only exit from Tibet to India. And so Nepalese government developed a very, very strict and tough border. And also there are some other reasons, change within the Tibet itself, because since I was told, and I read some articles, since 2001 to 3, Chinese government has given huge loan to the Tibetans to set up businesses. So all this together, since 2008, very few young Tibetans crossing the mountains and coming to India. So because of that, monasteries have a less and less and less Tibetans to join, to study. From 1981 to until 2000, early 2000, every year 300-400 young men, Tibetans, joined the monasteries. Now, since I became abbot, since last June, in Serme, we haven't got a single Tibetan man to join the monasteries. Then another issue, another connection with the relation to that, younger generation Tibetans who live in India or in Nepal, first of all, the population in exile is very small, not that big, less than 100,000. Although say about 100,000, I think in reality less than 100,000. Now recently they did a census. Half of that now live outside Nepal and India. That means in Europe, in America, in Canada, or in those other places. So population in India and Nepal, Tibetan is very small. I mean, this changes is recently, why the half now live outside India and Nepal. It started in early 91, 92, and it accelerated in around 2000. And now they are predicting in 2025 or 2030, only quarter will live in India or Nepal. And these young Tibetans, understandably, because of the global, the trend, they have only 2-3 children. Not like my parents, 8-9. Only 2-3, maximum 4. So number-wise, Tibetan parents having children in India and Nepal is very small, really small. And then, of course, unlike my parents' time, and now the younger generations, Tibetan parents, they have many options where they're going to send their children. Monastery is not the first option. So all this together, in general, it is really great to see the number of monks. I told you in Sera Mey we have about 600 something school children, and altogether 2,000, about 200 currently they take food from Serme, and Serache is much more. So the number is huge, but the Tibetan after 2008, very few newcomers in the monastery, less and less and less now almost stopped. So the Tibetans coming to the monasteries, number is very, very, very small. So that is another challenge. Another challenge which we don't know, don't have clue at all how to sort of to do something. We have no clue at all. Yesterday I teased the Tibetan community here. I said to the Tibetan community here, because as I just mentioned, now half of the exiled Tibetans are living outside India and Nepal. No matter how small the community in London or in the UK, we should work harder to teach Tibetan children the Tibetan language, Tibetan writing, and also, to give them the taste of Tibetan, the teachings of the Buddha. Because, now half of the exiled community live outside India and Nepal. Before, we can say, oh, they will keep the continuation of the Tibetan language and everything. But now that is slowly fading away. So I said to them, please don't, because in India I noticed, this is very funny, some of the young Tibetan parents, if their children are not behaving well, particularly boys, and they will say, if you don't behave well, I will send you to the monastery. And I said to my colleagues, that is not really a good sign at all. What it's saying is, the place over there is something, to cause fear, not joy, to those young boys. So there are these challenges. So being one of the abbots within the Gelug tradition, some of these challenges we don't have any clue how to sort it out. And others, some like arranging new way of studying, arranging the duration and bringing more meditation in the debating, courtyard. We can manage that. If, the very conservative, the admin, they resist, I can push. Whether they want or not, I can say, no, this is decision, you have to go. It is same in Sera as well as Serme. Lots of evening, during the term time, lots of recitations before the debating. Lots of recitations, hours and hours. I enjoyed that when I was a young boy because I have memorized a lot. And my teacher was the chanting master for 10, 12 years. So I enjoy. But, I said, this is not right. We should change. We should reduce the recitation, have more sort of divided meditation, debating, and the recitation. So I get lots of blame. But I said, no, whatever you say, I'm not going to change my mind. And this is going to happen. So those things we can do. But there are some bigger challenges which, the trend is gone too far and not that easy to, the solutions are not that easy. So that is the challenging part. So out of 3 points, interesting, which I haven't said that much, but that's enough. And the second one is I said more, that is challenging. So I said a lot because that's in my head. And I said more. So the third point, which is this deep satisfaction. And that is my personal experience. For example, this job requires lots of traveling, long distance, hours and hours in cars. When I came here, I took a taxi from Dharamsala. I was in Dharamsala. And because it is during the Diwali, that Indian festival, very, very difficult to get the flight from which usually I take from Amritsar or Chandigarh, but impossible. But I have to go down to Bangalore to catch flight to come over here, because I booked this flight from Bangalore to here, but I was up in Dharamsala. So I took a taxi from Dharamsala to Delhi, 14 hours. And hardly see further than 1.5 meters further than where you drive. But still they drive 60 kilometers. And suddenly in front of you there's a truck, which doesn't have any hazard lights or anything like that. So lots of traveling. And at the end of the traveling, I felt it is really tough. But that feeling, quite often, and I feel, okay, it is tough. It is not easy. It is very challenging. But what I'm doing, whether I'm able to do big things or not, I'm really serving this community where I come from, in deep down there might be some self-interest, but there's no self-interest whatsoever in my mind, in surface, but in deep down there might be, I don't know. So in that way I feel very, whatever challenges, whatever difficulties are there, deep down there's a deep satisfaction. Days doesn't go that fast. Morning, okay, there's another meeting, okay, there's another, somebody's going to come to see me, asking something, blah, blah, blah. So when you look at the day, not easy to pass. But months, years, since I took this job, nearly a year and a half is already passed. So in that way, deep down, as I mentioned earlier, my working age, it come this job at my working age. So I thought it's fine. And it is not going to be forever. And therefore it's fine. And also, years passing relatively fast, therefore it's fine. So deep down, there is a sense of satisfaction. Of course, I'm not going to able to please all the monks. That's impossible. But at the end of my term, hopefully I will feel okay. This lifetime, managed to do something to the community where I come from. And I had this opportunity, and I'll seize the opportunity, and I'll do my best to serve this. So that is what I'm going to share with you. Now a few questions. Usually from the questions, more interesting things will come. Any kind of question will be fine, except the Dharma question. Okay, ready?
Hi, thank you, sir. So you mentioned that there's this big problem with Tibetans not having in the future enough young Tibetans joining monastery. Is there maybe like, I was thinking maybe Indian communities, is there like a plan maybe to include others? Maybe is there like a higher interest maybe from Indian young people, and if that's possible, you kind of looking in that direction or not really?
Very good question. So I'm going to be very frank and very honest. Since I became abbot, there are 43 boys are joined the monastery. Out of 42, there are only 2 are Tibetans. The rest of all are I would say non-Tibetan speakers. Tibetan is not their first language. And they all, majority, are below age 12. So now you can get the answer. Do they have really interest in Dharma? Under age 12? Mainly football. I think it was boy.
So you need to create more football places.
Sorry?
You need to create more football patches then.
But that is not allowed in the monastery. Sadly. So we get lots of young boys, mainly from non-Tibetan speakers. Not many from Ladakh, used to be. Not many from Arunachal, used to be. But more from for example, recently there were 13 or 14 boys came from India and Bangladesh border. There's a particular tribe called Tsering Mey. And these parents, I never met those parents. And last year, usually around January, February, that's the end of Tibetan calendar. And they go, because we don't have classes before and around the Tibetan New Year. So they go to see the parents or relatives and so forth. And they have to come to see me saying, give me permission to go to. And when they come back, usually, when they come back, and they have to come to see me saying, I have returned. And I did a little bit, research on that. I asked those boys in the different ages. And below 10, 12, they tell really truth. They don't say, different things than what their parents have told them. Above 12, they say, slightly different. I can tell that from their face. So those small boys, I say, welcome back to the monastery. And how are your parents? And what was the advice your parents gave you? And they say, oh yeah, my father said, stay in the monastery until 15, then I will find you a job. This is understandable. And the age a little bit, above 13, 14, if you ask, what's your parents' advice? Initially, they scratch their head, they a little bit smile. Sometimes, no, they don't say anything. And I said, no, I know what they have said. And they will laugh. And the advice is almost same. So if you just think about in this country, the parents who know that those well-known institutions, if their children are going to those well-known institutions, they are proud of that. They are very happy with that. My parents, when I was into the monastery, my younger brother, they are very proud of that. They really want their sons to succeed in the monastery, to finish the education, to stay in the monastery, and so forth. Because they have this in their head, going to these big monasteries, Sera, Khenrinpoche, is like going to Cambridge in this country, Oxford, and so on and so forth. There's a prestige attitude. And these parents, they don't have that connection whatsoever. They have no understanding. What they have, the middleman who is bringing children to the monastery, say, your son will get education, free, fed, well fed. And maybe end of the year when he comes back, may bring a little bit of money. So think about that. So therefore the dropped out number is extremely high. The age started mainly in the constitution, Gelug constitution, it said age 7, but it's somehow much lower than that, 4, 5, 6. If you go a little bit higher, less and less and less, that's the sign when they go back, they don't return. Maybe Jeff knows these situations. Jabu is saying, Kanden, Jabu.
Is it more also a reflection on how difficult it is for children to leave Tibet now? Are there more restrictions?
Oh yeah. That's what I said earlier. The Chinese put it extremely hard, put huge pressure on Nepalese government. So they put it very, very restricted. So that's another issue. Okay, any other question? Okay, Cindy. Use this one.
Geshe, is there anything that we here in this community could offer you to help you in your challenges?
At this stage, I haven't got any idea, any sort of plan.
Maybe shall we give you some ideas?
Yes. Yes. I mean, some of those challenges, for example, in the monastery schools, like Sera Mey, there are many young students, as I mentioned earlier, but all the teachers are male. And so last year, around the end of last year, I had several meetings with the school admins and other in charge. I said, no, this is not good. We should have female teacher. It's really, the difference to particularly those young boys. And when they're grown up in that kind of environment, all male-oriented environment, it won't be very. So eventually they accept it. And now in the Serme school we have 5 female teachers out of 22 and 1 admin. So 6 women in there. But these monks who are in charge of the monastery, they don't have any bad motivation or anything like that. Has been like this for centuries. And they really care, they really worries about the qualities and the preservations and all those things. They don't have any bad attitude. But that has been like that. And need persuasion, need to explain, and with the reasons. Many of these monks have a very smart minds. If you explain with the reasons, they accept gradually.
What about materials? Actual.
Sorry.
Materials, school materials, or things like that.
That's one thing which I just when I first came here. I stayed 4 or 5 days with my sister in Leeds, and my sister has, the daughter age reaching 3, and some of her, those playing, the tools are up and that would be nice to have in the monastery. In India, there are, I visited 2 or 3 shops in Bangalore, the education, selling education. There are things there, but it is not just the material. It is the how to deliver those materials to the kids and so forth. Yeah. At this stage, I don't have any sort of clear thing. Okay, you may have this point. No. Okay, down there, Mary,
but
and no one.
remember to suggest if you need.
Yeah.
It's about the little monks, the small boys. A question, just small preamble. Once I was in Kopan, and they had little boy monks. They were able to speak and understand English, some of them.
Okay, now this is another interesting thing. As I mentioned, the very few Tibetan speakers in the schools, and there are 4 or 5 different languages are going around. There's Nepalese speaking. There's a small area from Arunachal, Eastern India, and Chiang Mai, big number. And but all the things are taught in Tibetan, and it's a big challenge for them. So because Sera Mey monastery's school is not, on the one hand, it is very much not well looked after, so it is not registered in the state governments as a school, so it's easy to change the curriculum. So what I said is, all the subjects until class, English will not be taught until class 3. So from the kindergarten up to class 3, everything is taught in Tibetan or whatever subject. And from then on, English is taught only as a language. All the subjects are taught in Tibetan. So in other words, medium is not in English, but in Tibetan. It will help a little bit, but it will, if they go further, they face different challenges. So in the schoolyard, I was told, and I haven't seen myself, some boys, they speak 3 different languages quite well. Their own language either is Nepalese, and their friends, whatever, Chiang Mai, Bangladesh language, or Hindi. Some they are, boys from the near Bodh Gaya, and so that it is not very much Tibetan. Tibetan is getting less and less, but all the teachers teach in Tibetan, so their brain might be very, very confused.
Little question,
Yes.
a small one. Again, remembering Kopan, to the small boys, I used to talk to them, and in English, of course, and say, what do you like the best? What is the best thing here? Separately, not just in a gang. Always and always and always, what do you like the most? Always the same answer was frustrations.
Prostration.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Because, we know why. All kids, universal thing. They like exercise and they need exercise. Now, it doesn't have to be football, I know. Not football in a monastery, sure. But, like, theoretically, not possible, some kind of nice physical, like yoga for boys, or, like something like that would be so nice for the kids.
Yeah.
And whatever the parents say, if the little boys, if they like school better, like sheer enjoyment, bit of sheer enjoyment.
I agree with you, but I can't dare to say this in the monastery. Can you pass the microphone down there? Venerable, what time are we going to stop?
Thank you, Geshe. My question is, we're talking a lot about...
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. My question is, we're talking about the young boys. What about the young girls?
Okay.
So I spent time many years ago in Dharamsala, 1 year, and I'm a retired Montessori teacher, so I would spend many days at the Dalai Lama sisters' Montessori school, and that the method worked very, very well. And obviously you're talking about many things of a dying culture, perhaps. So if the boys are going to the monasteries, are the young girls going to the nunneries?
Okay. So I didn't talk at all about the girls, because my role is more in the monastery, so I thought that's why I focus. You're right. There are nunneries up in the Dharamsala, also in the south. The number compared to the monastery is, nunnery is very less, and less numbers of nuns in those nunneries. My understanding, although I don't have my own a really clear evidence to, my understanding is this: in those nunneries, very similar pattern is showing in terms of the Tibetan nuns going into nunnery. Very similar patterns. Until 2008, there are Tibetan girls go to nunnery, mainly crossing from Tibet, not from the local Tibetan girls. And now that it stopped, same as for the monks. But there's those nunneries. I visited 2 nunneries in Dharamsala. One is Domaling, one is Jamyang Chuling, and not long ago. Number is not as high as those big monasteries like Sera Mey, but I think the number is a good number, manageable number, about 300, 400 nuns. And I thought that is a good number. Thousands is a little bit too much. But that has been like this in a long time, monks' number. So I don't know what is the right answer to your question. There's one nunnery not very far from where the Sera monastery. It is not within the Sera, the administration. It is under the Bengali, the Nyingma tradition. There's one nunnery, relatively big. I think I was told 300 nuns are there. And from that nunnery, majority of nuns were Bhutanese. Also, there are good numbers from Arunachal, and again, not many Tibetans. So the pattern is very similar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can you pass the microphone here?
Thank you, Geshe. I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
One question is just about. I mean, you've come from the West back. You've gone back from the West to this position in the monastery, and we now live in this, global world where, I mean, you're here in a Dharma center in London for so many decades, and the Buddha Dharma is spreading throughout the world. Many people from different cultures are coming into contact, and in a way that is also part of the responsibility of Dharma teachers, because we live in a globalized world with a lot of problems. I was just wondering if you would be able to talk about any relationship or any thought between the monastery, the Tibetan monastery, which traditionally was a place for Tibetans to come and preserve the culture as well as the Dharma traditions, and the fact that we now need maybe new kind of Dharma teachers in the world, maybe coming from monasteries or maybe coming from somewhere else, I don't know, to teach in different languages and so forth. And I don't know, obviously we have Geshe here as an example in a way of, Westerner who's been through the whole training system and come back. So that was one thing I was wondering if you had any thoughts, or, if you see any very promising people in your own monastery that can, could maybe go out into the world. And then the other question was just regarding your...
I'll answer to that.
Oh, yes, sure.
I have a very forgettable mind now.
Sure.
So, I hold this view for quite some time ago, and I've said this several times over the years while I was here. Yes, traditionally and up to now, and also, for foreseeable future, to preserve Tibetan Buddhism, is, and to produce these great teachers, going to be and had been from the monastery. But ideally, and also more in the longer term, it shouldn't be just in the monastery. The resource teacher comes from the teacher coming to the Dharma teacher coming from, is not only from the monastery. Why? Monastery, look at in this country. I think in 2008 or 9, one time I was in Leeds. I was taken to this ruin, the monastery, Christian monastery. These are not destroyed by the communists, Chinese communist or Russian communist. So they try to preserve this kind of amazing, the knowledge in a particular lifestyle, and extremely fragile. The Tibetan Buddhism survive in modern time in India or in exile is with sheer luck, because we have a great leader. His Holiness Dalai Lama, when in 1959 and we lost the country in 1960, first thing he did is two things. School for the kids, those monks who crossed the Himalayas have a place to stay, and that was in East India, a place called Baksa, which used to be, in a British colonial time, big jail. So many of these. Initially, Indian government said only 500 monks, but His Holiness said it's too small. We need more, because that time, we are heavily dependent on the generosity given by the Indian government and by the world. So when you say, the 1,000 young men just there and doing nothing apart from recitation, that doesn't go well for them. But His Holiness insists at least 1,500 monks. And that is also from all the 4 different traditions, not in only Gelug. Of course, Gelug has a big number of monks, and there's Nyingma, there's Kagyu, there's Satya, and Gelug. So because of that, he managed to got this vision and strength to challenge Indian governments, and we need more monks to have opportunity to stay and to continue this. And that is what in Tibetan we call marrow. Marrow is when you have when you burn wood and the amber, not ashes, the amber, where you start another, the next one. Yeah, that is the thing. The Sera Gandhin, which are re-established in South India. In Sera, there are only 300 monks. Now we have 6,000 together, Serme Mey. Because of His Holiness' vision, it happened. In the last year, a few years ago, when I studied the MA, I read one article about refugee, and among the many different refugee community, one of the most successful refugee community is Tibetan refugee. And the reason was given because they have a great leader. And when the international community started to deliver the support, they know exactly where the support is going to go. Because His Holiness had a leader, and under him there are people who work for him, and the support is good. Because of that, Tibetan refugee was very successful, and the United Nations refugee delivering this support was one of the most successful, and the reason is because we had the leader. If we hadn't had that kind of leader like His Holiness, I really don't think we would have this kind of Tibetan monastery that we have. So monastery life is not stable life. Very, very easy to change. So saying we want to preserve this kind of study, amazing knowledge, in that kind of lifestyle, it is risky. So I said this many times in here. I said ideally this kind of knowledge should go to the lay community and have lay institutions able to keep, preserve, and much stable than this particular lifestyle. When we say the monastery, I mean, it is amazing. Just for example, now these days, compared to my time, so when I joined the monastery, my parents have to pay monthly for my food. Nowadays, no, everything is free. Accommodation is free, food is free, and much, much better than when I was. I mean, nobody said this directly to me. Last year, one of my classmates, after I became abbot, one of my classmates came to see me personally, and we talked, we chatted a lot, and I said, really these current young boys are very lucky in terms compared to our life when we were studying and very hard, foods are not that great, places are, for example, I spent 3 years in a tent with my 2 teachers and so forth. I said that, and he said, don't say that. They will say, it is your karma. We are enjoying this good accommodation, everything, it is our karma. You didn't have it, it's your karma. So go your next question.
So my next question was, thank you so much, Geshe, that was great. The next question was, you touched on the fact that you did this MA, Social and Cultural Anthropology, MA, kind of unusual for a Tibetan Geshe and abbot to have done.
I was an abbot at that time. I was Londoner, South London.
True. So I was just wondering if maybe it's a shorter question, but it's quite a lot of study and quite a lot of material and all these things that you studied in the university context, and if that, I don't know how that has influenced the way you look at things in the monastery, in the world.
It gave me a little bit tools. As I said, since I became abbot, I did one big what's called a survey to the Serme monks. Not all the young boys, at certain class. There were 450 something monks participated with the 30 questions, 6 different sections. So that is because I did this study. I got that, and I just mentioned, one day, half an hour, I look at from my window, and I count how many monks passed during this half an hour, and 28 out of 28, 26 got the mobile in their hand. They're doing something. So these are the benefits of doing participant observation. That is the thing. Yeah, I'm doing exactly that now. Any other questions? Oh, there's one down. Oh yeah, Peter. Then one microphone is here. Start from there. Then next there. Yeah.
So I was just wondering, Geshe, why it is, what the reasons are that the local Tibetan community aren't sending their children to the monastery.
Why?
Why they're not doing it so much anymore?
I think if you were there, you won't send. If you had kid, you won't send to the monastery. Who will send your boys to wear these funny robes? Unless you have this culture background, as I mentioned. My parents, send me, or push or whatever, I don't know. They have this tremendous sense of proud to send their boy to the monastery, which has, great this prestige. Nowadays, I don't think they see there's a great prestige in those big monasteries. First of all, the topic that we are studying in the monastery, they are really great, amazing, very important. They don't have a clue what we are studying. Young Tibetans. They don't have a clue. And for them, it is also quite risky sending their boys to the monastery. After they reach age 16, 17, saying, sorry, Mom, I don't want to go there. Big trouble. The education that you receive in the monastery may benefit when you reach age 60 or 70, not when you are 20, 30s. It is understandable. So I'm not blaming to the young Tibetan parents, not at all. They all care their children, love their children, they want the best, and what they see best. As I mentioned earlier, good and bad, right and wrong has a tremendous culture influence. Now, that gave you, I think I've said this before. When I was with my parents, there was no television whatsoever. There was no mobile, there was no phone, nothing. So after the dinner, my dad will go to next to the small shrine and light a candle. Then they will start to do the prayer. That's what we hear when we are in bed. That's what we hear. Every single night, no matter how tough during the day in the field, wet and cold. In the evening, before going to bed, they will say the prayer. 3 times at the Tara prayers and other prayers, about an hour. Occasionally my dad will doze off. Nowadays, they're very, very difficult. Even during having dinner, television is going, oh, who wants to be millionaire, and all those junks. And that is how they've grown up and what they do. And that's the influence they have.
Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of what kind of an incentive that could be there, and I was wondering when Cynthia asked what we could do, and I was wondering if that was a financial issue for the local community, the Tibetan community, not wanting to send their children.
I don't think it's immediate. I don't think it's a financial issue. No. Maybe in the long term, when their children are grown up, they will have good job, well paid, and that may have financial issue. Yeah, can you pass the microphone over there? Yeah. Okay, then fine. Thank you. Any other question? Then if don't have question, we will, yeah. Here. Gentlemen used to ask lots of questions.
I'm back again.
Okay. Continue.
Is the education system within the monastery that's not spiritual, that we've been mentioning, to what?
Not spiritual, did you say?
Yeah, like languages and
okay.
Other things. To what level does that go? And to 16, 17,
okay.
Or maybe is it possible that of people getting degrees within the monastic society, environment?
We are slowly working on that. So for example, in Sera Mey, they have a good school. If you join Sera Mey school, you will get and continue, but some boys, their teacher don't want to continue, but majority they do. When they continue, they can go up to 10th standard. That's I think that's a GCSE level. They can have, and whatever certificate they have received, it is recognized because the school is registered under state government. But other monasteries like Sera Mey, school is not registered under the state government, and many other monasteries like in Khenrinpoche, they are not. So therefore, although we have all these subjects be taught, science, math, quality is not that because the exams are done internally, and also at the end when you finish your standard 8, you will get a certificate, but that's not useful to. So that when I was a young boy in the monastery, the debate what we are having now was there, and there's a big two divisions. Some monks, particularly those who have powers, authorities, they will say, yes, we should give some modern education, but not full. If you give full, they will run away with that education. They will not stay in the monastery. And when I was in the monastery, Sera Mey school and other monastery schools, the abbots, the in charge, they said, no, we're not going to register it. We'll give some education, but not that kind of recognized certificate education. If you do that, when they've got a certificate, they will run away to go to seek further education, then they won't be monk. There's a truth in there, not complete truth. There is an element of truth. But it is, for me, when I was there, and it's still not right idea, wrong idea. To give full, whether they stay in the monastery or not, but monastery should arrange whole education, modern education, GCSE level, A level, or if they want to go further, then they have to go. We don't have the, above the, only Serge has a modern education up to GCSE level, 10th standard. Other monasteries we don't have. But now, I think before I became abbot, maybe 2-3 years ago, the Gelug International Institution, or there's a Gelug organization, that is all the Khenrinpoche, all those, working to have all the monastery school be registered in the state level and have to give the modern, and eventually to set up a recognized university. That's what we are working with that. And we are hoping this may give some form of attraction to the monastery, not to become some kind of fearful place to be sent.
Exactly.
Sorry?
You need someone good at marketing.
Will you come?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Shall we stop here then? It's nearly 8. And so what I want to say first, 2 things. First, thank you very much for coming, and it is really, really nice to see, many familiar faces. I shouldn't say old faces. So many familiar faces, and thank you for coming. And hopefully we'll see you next year. And I'm planning to come next year, spend a little bit longer time next year. So thank you for coming. And so the second one is, as you can see, these nice 12 Buddhas, representing Buddha's 12 deeds, the historical Buddha's 12 deeds. These 6 are before he became monk, and these 6 are after he became monks, including the last parinirvana, passing into nirvana. So when I was here, they were kept as a completely, what is the right word? Natural, not just the natural. I was told, the Protestant culture want less color, less gold. So deliberately kept that just stone color. But now very nicely, what's called gilded with the gold, and with the skill, with the dedication, and so forth. And it is done by one man. And that is Miga. And Miga, will you come here? There's a card signed by some of those, friends from Jamyang. I was asked to give to you because you have got a very big camera. Thank you. Migal had worked in this center many times. Can you see those nice prayer books? These are created by Migal. So he is creator, not God, but creator. Sorry. And this beautiful, the table is also created by Migal, and also many other things around, And then there's a nice behind this, there's a nice painting behind the. Is it Thousand Chenrezig? Yeah, Migal shrine that Migal. And one time I was very worried because he was spending hours and hours in the downstairs, in the basement. Was very cold, very dusty, and I thought he'd dead there. And then next day he was again here. Anyway, one of the very important community in this. Thank you, Mika. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.